why I feel that's authentic to me, because I've really grown personally, losing 100 pounds and changing every aspect of my life. And I've grown professionally, being a high school dropout, starting a business and growing it to $100 million and successfully exiting it. Like, I can't turn off growth. Everything I think about personally and professionally is about growth. Mm-hmm. And so as I went through and really created my personal brand over the last 3-4 years, that's what came true to me. My name is Mike Fata. I'm a 25-year entrepreneur, and I'm on Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the show. Mike, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I usually ask my guests, how did you get this job?
Found my purpose in life by changing my health and losing over 100 pounds and getting just super interested in health, and started a health food business. And 25 years later, I guess that's my full-time job, is being in health and the business of health.
Yeah. And, for context, I watch your stuff. I'm a fan. I thought it would come, with no sleeves. We were talking off camera.
I thought I wore sleeves.
Match your energy, at least. I love that. So put a timestamp on that. When did you start really getting serious about your health? I mean, you say you're like over 100 pounds overweight. You're not eating right, not moving your bones.
Yep.
Put a timestamp.
Yep. I hit 300 pounds when I was 18 years old, which was in 1995. And I had enough of feeling shitty and decided to finally do something about it, and started my health journey in 95. And then over 2.5 years, I lost over 100 pounds and got really interested in health. And then in 1998, so 3 years after I started my health journey, I started Manitoba Harvest and got in the health food business.
Yeah. Talk more about that, because back in 98, I mean, we're talking about the internet's basically about 1 year old. No one's got websites. I mean, the world is starting to build their own websites slowly, surely in 98, but we're still getting AOL discs in the mail to go on and do dial-up internet. That's the era we're in. There's no social media. It was called digital at the time. So how did you get information? I mean, did you go to the library and go old school? How did you learn?
I was learning from the health food store. Our health food stores had a number of books on health. So at least, that side of the business, understanding, because I was super interested in myself, understanding what other consumers were interested in, why people were choosing a plant-based diet, a vegetarian or vegan diet at that time, bodybuilding. And I was reading, I was working out kind of more in the bodybuilding fashion. So reading bodybuilding magazines and understanding the consumer from that level. And then on the business side, I was making investments and actually buying books back then. And so probably for a good 10 years, if not 20 years, if I wasn't reading about health, I was reading about business, and started to get really interested in other founders of consumer packaged goods businesses and their story and how they built their business.
Yeah. So talk about how these two things are connected. I mean, it seems intuitive that good health, both mental and physical, is connected to being good at business, but how do you look at it these days?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is like being an athlete. If you're not in your best shape, you're not going to perform your best, right? And athletes know that. That's why they sleep and eat and train for their sport. And so I've always tied the two together and realized that when I didn't take care of my health and I didn't sleep and thought I could cut eating good and skip the workout, I just felt poorly. My brain didn't work as well. I wasn't as sharp. I couldn't get into deep work or that flow state that I know is just makes me 10 times more effective. And so over the years, I've learned that taking the extra time in my day to actually do my wellness routine gave me all the capacity to be really, really effective in business.
Yeah, I would co-sign that. I mean, I think it's really easy to say to yourself, I'm busy today, I got to skip that workout, or I'm not going to do this routine, in the spirit of getting more work done, but it's just throws you out of balance.
And some people have been really successful with that. But talk with some of those folks and they'll say, oh my God, now I have millions of dollars, or I'm free, I'm successful. but I have this illness or disease, or they've compromised themselves to a point of really not being able to now enjoy their wealth or their success.
Yeah, I look at one kind of older guy, one younger guy as that example. I look at Zuckerberg and his transformation. It's kind of been incredible to me to see him make such a turnaround. Well, let's put a pin in that too, because I want to talk about personal branding in a second. But like, it was amazing that he sort of went from, America's most hated as he was put on trial and all these things. And then he somehow, started getting fit. Remember, the day he put zinc all over his face, he's out there foil surfing. And then that sort of led to jiu-jitsu. And now he's like this, he's rucking and he's doing all kinds. He's just like a bro now, and like completely 180. Like, it seems like health has turned his life around, both reputation and his own personal life.
Yeah, I think so too. And fatherhood, I think, helped that out. Being a family man, and then you become more relatable. But I think we're living in a time where people are relating with people that are taking their health seriously. 20 years ago when we started in business, people thought that was still weird. You were an outlier if you were going to the gym every day, or you're putting that extra effort into your food or your diet. I think it's becoming more popular now.
Yeah, you were labeled like a fanatic. And then I think about the older guy in the room, the Jeff Bezos, getting his swole on. What a transformation that guy's like, like mega transformation from super wimpy to now like, legit dude.
Yeah. Having the time and the money to have the team behind you of, I'm sure, right? Like nutritionists and dietitians and coaches and trainers and scientists, really. You can do a lot. The body can change a lot.
Yeah. So you had a birthday this last week, and I saw it all over your socials. Talk about some of your routines that are important to you.
And nowadays, I'm fortunate that I'm time wealthy. I really control my time, and I start my day with a wellness routine. And if I have all the time that day, it's about 3 hours. By the time I get up, I have a coffee in the morning and just chill out and get my mind straight. But then I jump right into a weight training routine and or cardio, running or swimming usually. And at the end of that, doing some yoga and stretching, and then getting in the sauna and sweating it out, and then doing some cold plunging, and usually some meditation in the sauna. And it's no joke. It's like 2.5 or 3 hours. People say, "Oh, yeah, I'm one of those guys now." Probably, if people say, "Oh, yeah." Well, you've made it now, and so you could say that a morning routine is part of your success. Well, the reality is that I've had that morning routine for 25 years. It's just that I've not always had 2.5 or 3 hours. Sometimes I had to do it in a half an hour or an hour, but I always kept myself kind of straight. And now it's just maybe world class. I got myself to a world class routine for me.
Yeah. How do you look at balance now?
I don't like the word balance. I've never liked the word balance. I get that it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but I know that balance can be a restrictor, and especially as entrepreneurs, life's not balanced. We have to go. Yeah. If I look at the success that I created, there was many 100-hour work weeks. I put it all on the line that week, and we moved mountains, and then I took time to reflect, or I took time to recharge. I don't call that balance. That's two opposite extremities, right? Do they balance each other out? Maybe, but I think about it more. Keep yourself healthy. That's why I always go back to health, because if you're healthy, then you could do these like sprints, and even if that sprint turns into a marathon or an Ironman in business, and it's not going to affect you like overly negatively.
Yeah. I love that advice. I recently saw, do you know who Christian McCaffrey is? He plays running back for the 49ers, NFL.
I don't know, but...
So he's like one of the top players in the NFL, and he's this incredible running back, and there's a lot of videos on his training, and I just did this deep dive down the rabbit hole to watch how Christian trains. And his trainer was saying that he does that. Like, it's like short, super intense, like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like 1,000, these intervals, but like he takes the equal amount of time to like recover. And so it's like these bursts of like high intense workouts, whether it's strength training or speed or endurance, and then he has to then take the time to recover. So it's like he's making withdrawals, but he's also making deposits at the same time so that he never overdraws the account, if you understand the metaphor.
Yeah, and some people would say that's balance. I think of it more as rhythm, because balance, I think when people talk, and especially as in business, right? People talk about work-life balance. And a lot of times people use that as an excuse to not push themselves to that extreme in business that's needed to really move the needle. And again, I like to be realistically aggressive in whatever I do. And what does that mean? Well, you push the boundaries, not so that you're past your capacity, but right on the verge of that, constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a case could be made, if it's Christmas Eve, it's like, hey, we can celebrate Christmas 2 weeks from now. But like if we have a deadline and everything's on the line and everything's at stake, I get it.
So one of my best memories, Brian, is because I do celebrate sacrifices that I made over the years that made me who I am today. One of them was working on a mission critical project on my birthday, overnight, around the clock. It was until like 3-4 in the morning when my family and my friends were out celebrating my birthday, and I had to call it. But I'll remember that one forever. And I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I know that it was those times that all of a sudden opened the door to a new customer, to a new level of revenue, to new level of success. So I do celebrate that now, all these years later. It didn't feel great in the moment, but it was well worth it.
Well, I think that's a great lesson to extract. I mean, I think what you're saying is that's the long game, not the short game. The short game is like, oh man, it's the weekend, and then that stuff stacks, right? In the opposite direction. Whereas when you're playing the long game, hey man, birthdays are good all month. Birthdays are good all year. So, it doesn't have to be on the day or, whatever the circumstance, but you're playing that long game.
Yeah, I think, and I like to think about it as think about success in decades instead of days, right? Yeah. Use that example of the entrepreneur that's an athlete. Athletes that are at the world-class level are training for the Olympics that only happen every 4 years, and they're not thinking about the day, the sacrifice for the day or the week or whatever, waiting it for the weekend. They're thinking, I'm training for the next 4 years to be ready for competition. And if we take that approach to entrepreneurship and business, we're going to be that much more successful.
Yeah. How do you think about the path now? Conventional, unconventional? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I've been the one to stand up for the unconventional path because that's where I came from. When I started in business, everyone was talking about the conventional path, and you go to school and then you go to a good university and you get well educated and you open up all these opportunities in community and you go out there and you just kill it. That's great for people that come from that background. I didn't. I grew up with a single mom and we were poor, and so that was one of the deciding factors for me to drop out of high school and start working. And so that was the path that I took, and it was really then all kind of more self-taught and work experience and life experience that led me into entrepreneurship. But I'm not an anti school guy or now I think in 2024 we know there's many different paths, but I still stand up to people saying the unconventional ones do lead or can lead to tremendous success. It doesn't. There doesn't have to be a formal way, and people shouldn't think about that they're missing a formality that's going to not allow them to be successful.
Yeah, I love that Robert Frost poem. Right, two roads diverge. I took the path less wandered by, I think was the the words. Talk about your investments now. How are you looking at business? How are you picking partners? You're wearing the midday squares. You're repping the midday squares. I actually just talked to Jake the other day. We were introduced by a mutual friend. But how are you looking at opportunities now from your vantage point, POV?
Yeah, I think it's been organically would be the way I would describe it. After we sold Manitoba Harvest 5 years ago now in 2019, and I went through my kind of rebirth, what am I going to do now after I'm not operating and being a CEO of the business? I just wanted to be helpful to other people. And so I started having conversations with founders in the natural products, food and beverage space, because I'd say that's my lane. I'm passionate about it as a consumer and in business. I have a lot of success there. And so I started having these conversations, and I had like 1,000 conversations over 2.5, 3 years. And what led to that is connecting with some really cool founders that made products that I love having in my house. So I've kind of simplified my investment approach, the high level, to products that I have in my house, in my fridge, that are always on the shopping list. Like, we got to buy twice as much of them because we just overly love them and consume them. And then meeting founders that I also want to have in my house and are just really cool people, and I want to hang out and strategize with them. And if those two pieces are right off the top, then I can get into the business and say, yes, I'm bullish on manufacturing. So I like companies that own their manufacturing base generally, that have very unique products that are very scalable, global in nature. And then I'm a venture growth investor. My secret sauce is that I have experience on the $10 million to $100 million revenue climb, which makes me very unique as an investor. So kind of stack all those things together from a criteria standpoint, and obviously there's very few companies that are now in that situation that are investable by me, because they're not the right product fit for me personally as a consumer, or they're not at the right stage or scale. But if all those things align, which now there's 8 companies in my portfolio, I feel like I can really contribute to the success of those businesses outside of just capital.
Let's go a little deeper there. So you got 8 in the portfolio. What type of equity are you looking for? Like, when you're investing, like, it's hard to jump into a company like Midday Squares, for example, and say, I want 51%. So, like, what are the opportunities? Like,
yeah, I've always been a smaller piece of a bigger pie kind of guy. When we started Manitoba Harvest, there was 3 co-founders, and so I had a third of the business. But then as we raised capital and brought on institutional shareholders, my equity got diluted, and I was down to like 10% of the business. But a $400 million transaction and having 10% of it is still a very big deal. And so I've never saw it as like I need to be a controlling shareholder. It's actually quite opposite. I don't want to have the stress of owning or operating these businesses. I want to be a part in it. And so if there's like a 3 to 5% investment holdings for me, and we can 5 or 10 times the business, I know that I'll do just fine in that venture as an investor. And so, again, that approach isn't for everybody. Some people like to have control, or they need to have control. That's not me. I want to provide value, again, outside of the capital. Usually that's in the form of advising the founders of what the next step of good looks like. Because it's in the consumer packaged goods business, maybe in any business, but it's one thing to grow the business to $5 or $10 million in annual revenue, which most entrepreneurs don't actually do. But past that $10 million, you have to actually build a solid foundation of a business and a team and strategic plan. And I know that really well because I lived it for 20 years.
Yeah. Maybe without naming names, what's a piece of advice recently that you gave to founders or some of the partner companies you're working with? Like, maybe you saw them, the ship was starting to head towards the rocks, and you're like, whoa, this is a big problem, guys. We got to fix this. Here's what we should do.
Yeah, what comes up often is, how do you prioritize your effort, and especially as you're doing multiple things. In the product business, it usually comes in doing multiple products, which is really tough, right? It's use Midday Squares as an example. One product, now 5 different flavors of the product, very, very easy, right? But if you get into a business where you have a couple different product lines, and especially, the prioritization of those products, you bring out a new product and it starts to do really well, you have to, and my advice has been, and it will be constantly, is like, make sure that you're putting the right amount of resources, all aspects of resources in the business, the money invested, the distribution dollars invested, the team effort and time into that thing that's working. Because I learned that myself, right? Like at $100 million business at Manitoba Harvest, 75 million of it was hemp hearts. And that and everything else that we were doing, hemp protein and hemp milk and hemp bars and cereal, made up the rest of it. And so my learning was, the only reason that we created that success was because my focus to the team on, I want you to say hemp hearts for 5 times before you mention any one of these other products to a new customer or to an opportunity, right? And so it's that kind of focus and discipline that I constantly remind founders of, whether I'm invested in them or I'm just doing analysis of their business and helping them from a coaching standpoint or mentorship standpoint.
Yeah. Let's talk about brand. This series is called Behind the Brand. People come to this series, to learn how to build their brand, get insights from experts who've done it. So let's talk about 2 things. I want to know like what the Mike Fata brand is, but I also want to know, in your opinion, what's the difference between a product and a brand? How do you define it?
Well, I see a brand as a person or a thing, right? Like it's and that's why it's easy for me to relate to a personal brand, and I'll unpack that for you. Like what Mike Fata's brand nowadays, I would say it's about growth, right? I'm wearing it today. My book is called entitled Grow. Why I feel that's authentic to me, because I've really grown personally, losing 100 pounds and changing every aspect of my life. And I've grown professionally, being a high school dropout, starting a business and growing it to $100 million and successfully exiting it. Like, I can't turn off growth. Everything I think about personally and professionally is about growth. Mm-hmm. And so as I went through and really created my personal brand over the last 3-4 years, that's what came true to me. But as you think about it, in your second part of your question, the difference between a product and a brand, a product can be a commodity, and people will choose it or not choose it. A brand means something to someone. It makes them feel a certain way. That's why they'll pay more for it. That's why they'll feel good talking about it or wearing it or eating it. And so it takes a lot more work. I think you need a great product to make a great brand, but it takes a lot of work to make that brand mean something. Very much like it takes a lot of work for someone to know your reputation. We use that word reputation, which is basically your brand. Like, what's Brian all about? How's Brian going to show up in the hard times? Or, what does Brian do for the community? And, and so I'm learning a lot more about that as I've been actually putting my personal brand out there over the last 3 or 4 years, even after building $100 million business and brand.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think that aligns with what a lot of these other experts on brand, people who've written books on the subject, have said. A brand is distinct. It stands for something. It's the reason why people are willing to wait in line at the Chanel store. There's 50 people deep in line and only 5 people allowed in the store. And in fact, that's part of Chanel's brand. It's like, no, actually, you can't come in stampeding like a herd and raid all of our stuff. You have to wait. And so waiting is part of the brand experience, right? It's distinct, it's memorable, it stands out, and it's a shorthand, right? It's what you come to expect. So, if you're going to go to a hockey game, you kind of know what you might get. You might get some fights. You might have some great beers. You might have fun with your friends. There's going to be loud music. It's a shorthand, and so you know what you can expect. And hopefully, if you are putting your brand out there, then you're walking the talk, and the stuff that you say tracks with the experience people have. Because once you put it out there in the world, then it's up to the people who have these touch points to make up their mind about your brand. Like, you might have a million different impressions. So maybe let's take an opportunity, because you rep in the midday squares. What is the Midday Square brand? What's their shorthand? What do they stand for? What's it all about? And why would someone pay a premium, even though it's not a luxury good? We're not talking about a $5,000 purse here. We're talking about squares you could get at Costco or wherever. But what is the Midday Squares brand?
Great question. And I can't say that I'm an expert on all things brand, but I could tell you what drew me into Midday Squares was it's an excitement for more. You know, the founders have done a great job. Again, not only making a great product, like the chocolate bars are just, they're great. They're great in flavor. They make you feel good. You're going to want to come back and buy them again and again. But what the three of them have done is really, and it is being authentically themselves, is like put out this excitement and opportunity for more, you know? 5 years ago, people thought it was like crazy videos and behind the scenes and sharing it all. But they're really bringing people along with their journey. And I think people want to feel a certain amount of excitement in their life. And again, not every brand can bring that to them, right? Some brands are bringing, and my brand that I created was all about the quality message, you know, which as you talk about kind of high end consumer clothing and cars and stuff, they're bringing like quality and that aspect to it. But I think MDS is bringing more excitement and mystique that pulls consumers in.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think quality is kind of table stakes nowadays, right? Like if it tastes like shit, I mean, we're just not going to buy it. We're not going to eat it, and we're not going to keep buying it.
Yeah.
So
in the food and beverage business, for sure, you know, and maybe a number of different categories, it's really well increased. Like I say back, I've been in the health food business for 25 years, right? 25 years ago, you could only get natural and organic foods in a health food store. You can go to a grocery store or to a Costco or to a convenience store and buy natural and organic foods. So, you know, people that were choosing that product, whether it was, again, plant-based or it was gluten-free or they're looking for lower sugar, they were buying the functionality and that meant that it could not deliver on taste. 2024, you know, everyone expects it to taste good, food and beverage, and to be healthy if that's what they're choosing, the functionality that they're looking for.
Yeah, just to stay on the Midday Squares strategy, it's like, and I think a lot of people fall into the same challenge. In fact, probably they're in the trenches battling it out right now, which is like, hey, my stuff tastes amazing too. I'll stack it up to Midday Squares any day, go toe to toe. Great taste, great for you. So like, it's tough to start that race in a features and benefits competition, because what happens if you do that, and even if you're competing on price, you just line up like Amazon, and then it becomes this race to the bottom. And so I guess what I'm asking is like, how do you know, you're saying Midday Squares is all about excitement and getting people, you know, pumped. I agree. Their socials are like unparalleled, unmatched. They're like, you know, I don't see Cliff Bar or, you know, Hershey, whoever's the equivalent, Mr. Beast, even the Feastables brand, which is, you know, just a pure chocolate bar that's bad for you. You know, he brings the thunder in different ways, but I don't see anyone else competing on this level. And yet it's still kind of falling into a commodity trap. So like, how do you build that brand outside of that? Is it community based? It's like, we'll be there wherever you are. Is it? Yeah,
I think you know, I think Midday Squares started in. I like to think about it as the farmers market approach. You know, in their local community. They started in Montreal and would go and hand deliver product to people that were really interested. So they started this like bullseye of the community right in their local neighborhood.
Yeah, and then that.
Yeah, and then through social media and getting the story out there was a pull. You know, we know that that's the best strategy in a number of businesses, but for sure in consumer packaged goods, food and beverage, you don't want to push. We don't, unless you a big Fortune 100 food and beverage company that has billions of dollars. Push strategies cost so much money that you said it yourself. You could have a great tasting product, but you got to get the message out there. You have to make the noise to get people to actually want to try it, to get your retailers to want to put it on the shelf. So I'm a big believer in like creating that bullseye first, and then growing the community out where, because of social media, because of storytelling, there was interest. Like MDS, Midday Square, is launching into the US. Like within 2 years, they had national distribution because people could see them online and understand who they were, and even their direct-to-consumer aspect, which is a strategy that they had consumers in a number of pockets around the U.S. that all of a sudden could transition into the stores and support buying local at retail as well.
Yeah. You want to ask me what I think the Midday Squares brand is?
Sure. What do you think it is?
I think it's a David and Goliath story. I think it's a little guy from Montreal, making something great and taking on the giants and winning.
Yeah, I like that.
I think they rally the community to say, hey, we need you. Like, show up, roll call.
Yeah, maybe that's right. Maybe that was just right under my nose, Brian, so I didn't come. But because the reality is, I love the underdog story, and I think everyone does. Like my story is an underdog story, right? Like growing up poor, dropping out of high school, losing weight, even championing hemp, which hemp was weird at the time, right? And Margaret Coons from Nuts for Cheese in my portfolio, that's making the most delicious organic plant-based like cashew cheese, cashew milk and cashew cheeses, is also an underdog story. She's taken on big dairy and making a great product, and so I maybe I didn't really think about that, but maybe I'm just more drawn to also brands and stories like that is right under my nose.
Yeah, and so just put a cap on what you just said. I totally agree, and I think that's what makes Midday Square so relatable. Is like that team thinks like everybody. They're just like one of us, and so we want to help them win. We want to help them win. We want to see them succeed, and so we'll buy their stuff. We'll eat their product, and I couldn't care less about Cliff Bar, some of these other big brands that have sold out to General Mills, whatever. Sidebar, speaking of General Mills, so I was in college around 1999, and I was working my way through college at Ralph Lauren clothing store, working retail, part-time, going to school. And my boss, his name was Bill American. Bill had this daughter, and they came from Colorado. But Bill was sort of a smart business guy, had a lot of investments, a ton of sort of New York City style experience. And so I quit eventually because, I'd graduated and I was doing my thing. And then a year after, Bill quit, and I was like very surprised to hear that he left the company. But he went back to help his daughter start this little startup. His daughter's name was Lara, and she was making these little protein bars out of her kitchen. And he helped kind of give her funding, and that became Lara Bar. And then, 3 or 4 years later, I think they sold the company for I don't know, I think it was like $50 to $100 million.
Yeah, it was one of the first exits. I remember I was just coming into the industry, and as a consumer, I was never really into the Power bars or Cliff bars. They were more formulated bars like that, and I like Lara because it was 4 ingredients, or like very, very simple whole foods. And but I watched their success, and it was one of the first exits that I saw. Oh, okay, this is what happens. You build a nice natural organic food company, and then the big food and beverage companies want to buy that because they can't innovate like that.
Yeah.
And so I've had a number of friends that had similar success to me of growing a big business in natural and then selling it to one of the larger food and beverage companies.
How are you advising? I would assume you have 8 different companies in the portfolio, but maybe they're all different. Are you helping strategize that way to say, hey, let's build this up to a certain amount and then let's have an exit? Or are you encouraging hey, stay the course. This thing's going to be huge. It's $1 billion industry. Keep going. Don't lose your focus.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, right? As in entrepreneurship, there's not just one right way. But generally, if I'm involved in a business, from a institutional investor standpoint, those companies are usually trying to grow again from like 10 million to 50 or 10 to 100 million, and know at that scale, when you get up to like $100 million scale in food and beverage, that there's going to be an exit opportunity because one of these larger companies want to buy you. And so it's really about what are you creating, because the more simple that your business is at scale, the more valuable it's going to be. And I could talk midday squares all day long because they had their in CPG. We talk about $1 million SKUs and $10 million categories to be really successful. And MDS hit that like right off the bat. They had their first product. They did a couple $1 million in sales just having one bar. Now they're very open about their doing $25 million in sales and having 5 different flavors of the bar. And Lara, your example earlier, was just like that as well. They had like 6 or 7 bars, but they amassed a decent amount of scale. Whereas if you make a complex company, like I'm in a beverage, but then I also launched a bar, or I'm in a beverage and I think I'm going to be a snack food company too, it really limits, even if you build a bigger successful company, it really limits what the exit opportunity is. You have to think about both what you're creating in the long run, but also just focus on creating a good business and scaling it to get towards a potential exit.
Yeah. How do you think about farming versus hunting mindset nowadays? I know you talked a little bit about your farming days.
Yeah, I'm a big farmer. I think in a bigger organization, you're going to have it needs to be a farming-based mentality with some hunting. But I think where a lot of entrepreneurs, especially younger entrepreneurs that aren't as experienced, they think it's all about hunting, and they're out there every day looking for the next thing to kill, the next revenue opportunity, and they don't think a lot about farming. Like, what is the year? What's our annual plan for the year? If we're going after 10 retailers and 1,000 new doors of distribution, and we're going to put 3 products in the mix, and like that's a farming mentality, right? Like you got to plan your season. What resources do you need to go and seed your opportunities? What does success look like when you go to harvest those opportunities? And so after years and years of training from an entrepreneur to more of a CEO, chief executive kind of mindset, I've transitioned more to a farming mindset and strong governance around that and strong strategic planning.
How are you reaching out to people? I would assume these days people are opening your emails, taking your calls. You probably got a lot of text DMs happening, but like take it back. Before the big success or the big exits, how are you getting to the decision makers to get in those doors? What tactics were you using? Because it can be tough, right?
Yeah, for sure. It is tough. Like showing up is the best way. So, and some of these tactics are still true to today, even though we have more tools now. It's easier, it's more challenging, and it's also easier in some capacity to be an entrepreneur. But trade shows has been a big thing for me, right? Because you can go to a trade show and with objectives, like I want to meet the Walmart buyer. I know he's here at this show somewhere, Natural Products Expo. That's a farming mentality. Hunting mentality would be I'm just going to go to the show and hope I run into him, and then maybe I can land the deal. Or I'm going to go to the Natural Products Expo, and my number one mission for this show is the Walmart buyer, and how can I get at him at the show? Who do I know that knows him because he's going to be at the show, he or she? What events are they going to be going to around the show that I can show up at? Like having strategy and showing up there. Same is true outside of trade shows of going and visiting the customer. Like, when we built a very large business with Costco, was one of our main retailers, and I went to every region of Costco in Canada and in the U.S., not only to buyer meetings, but to their charity events and to their golf tournaments and opportunities where I could have even 2 or 3 minutes with a buyer or one of the executives there so they knew who I was. Or like, these are the needle movers, right? And that does not happen when we're sitting in the comfort of our office or we're sitting in the comfort of our home. So you got to show up. And of course nowadays, and I'm a big believer in in LinkedIn specifically as a social media tool to build your personal brand, because people are interested in, why is the founder doing this business and what are they learning and who are they? And we know that all the distributors and buyers and brokers and everyone you need to know in business, there's now almost 1 billion people on LinkedIn that you can get at them that way as well. So a combination of those two efforts is my recommendation to every entrepreneur that I talk to.
Yeah, and I would say LinkedIn is great too. But I think the general rule is like, where are your people at? So, if they're hanging out on Twitter, X, or whatever we're calling it these days, or if they're on Instagram, like, just like you said, if they're going to that trade show or that golf tournament or that charity thing, you got to be there. And the same goes for socials, right? That's the way I think that you pick your poison is go where people.
I think so too. I say LinkedIn because I think about LinkedIn as a 24/7 trade show, and Twitter, X, or Instagram, or TikTok, or some of these places you can for sure gain visibility and grow your personal brand and open opportunities for your business. I just don't see it the same way as LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn people are ready and in trade show mode 24/7.
Yeah, it's true. It's a business ecosystem. So let's stay on the content strategy for a second. So you're building your personal brand. You're active on LinkedIn. I see your posts all the time. They're great. Some are personal. Some are businessy. What is the strategy, and how much money? Let's talk about money, Mike. How much money are you investing? Podcasting or creating content? Like, let's start there. What's the budget for your content strategy?
I'll back up from even one piece. So one of the things for me, Ryan, is I don't want to feel like I'm working. I don't want to feel like I have to do something. I want to do something.
Right.
Okay. And it's a fine line there on some things. Social media is one of those. So I'm not coming at social media saying how many followers can I amass and how big can this be, because I do have a decent amount of personal resources and I can put big budgets to these things. But my concern is that'll start feeling like work for me. And for 2.5 decades, I did a lot of work, and now I want to do things that I enjoy. So it's not a huge budget. I produce the majority of my content myself. I put a lot of effort over the last 2 or 3 years on first copywriting and copy editing and understanding the messages that I want to share that are authentic to me, but how do I write them in a form that people actually want to digest and creates more virality or just more engagement with the community. And so it started there. It also, I've learned a lot about a picture is worth 1,000 words. I used to say a picture is worth 1,000 tons of hemp heart sales, but you need a good scroll stopper image. And so I've learned a lot about photography. I do my own photography. Midday Squares, it taught me a lot about doing simple quarterly photo shoots that don't cost a lot, but you create a bunch of content. Then I've taken it over the last, as I've evolved over the last 3 or 4 years, more into the podcast and then video formats to it. So I do have some third parties that help me. In podcast editing, I was doing all the recording and scripting and all that myself, interviewing. Same thing with video production. Like I have a studio set up at home. I shoot the 60-second pitch videos either at home or on the road. Put the package together and have a video editor that'll edit it to my brief. And so
That's great, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and catchy for people. And my goal is to help more entrepreneurs. So it's not like how big can the Mike Fata brand be? I just know that if I'm helpful to others, I enjoy it. I have a fun time with it, and then people like that, and they want to see me win as well. So maybe it's a long answer, but I want to give those details to your question. It's probably $2,500 a month now in kind of editing services, but the majority, I'm the creative director and the scripter and the copywriter and the videographer or photographer, and that's the reason I could be really efficient with it. So for a lot of younger or entrepreneurs just don't have a lot of capital resources to put that way, it doesn't have to be, but they do have to understand the process, right? Like what does good process look like? And then what's their own core competencies? Like, do they have skills in some of those areas, or can they learn those skills? And not everybody can, or not everybody is interested in doing it.
Yeah. I like what you said. The wheels in my head are turning. I'm thinking back to this interview I did with Alex Hermosi. Do you know Alex?
Yeah.
So Alex said that he's spending about $250,000 a month on content. And if you look at his feed, it makes sense. The guy's just a machine, where he has a team of, 20 probably people now working on his behalf, similar to what Gary did back in the day when he was cranking out content at scale. But yeah, I think the message that we're both sort of saying is you got to think of yourself as a brand, a personal brand. You got to think of yourself like a publisher or like a media company, but you have to be authentic to yourself, to your own personal brand. You can't fake the funk, as you say. And whether that's $2,500 a month or $250,000 a month, somewhere in between that sliding scale, you ought to be. Whether you're the founder, CEO, or you got an exit, or you're just getting started, you've got to start building your personal brand somehow, someplace, somewhere. Or as they say, if you don't tell people what you stand for, what you're about, then they'll just make assumptions. And you know what they say about assumptions.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, the reason that I'm doing it my way is, for me, is because my personal guide rails for myself were, I don't want to report to anybody in business, and I don't want anyone reporting to me. So I'm a solopreneur. I have been for 5 years now. Everything I do is with others as a third-party contract. I don't have any employees, and because I'm a single dad to two full-time. I'm a full-time single dad to two teenagers. My health and my family is really important to me, and so those drive me as well. But I'm not saying that I'm never going to crank that budget up, because I'm learning at the same time, and I could see if I can make a more positive impact on my own journey and other people's journey, then I have the knowledge to be able to do it and turn on some of those resources. But Alex Hormozy, he's got a good 15 years younger than me, I think. Maybe he's in the prime of what him and Layla are building there, and so everyone's walking a different path. But to the point, you have to do something. Like, we're living in 2024 and beyond. As an entrepreneur, you have to create your personal brand, even if your personal brand is being the founder and CEO of your business. It's critical. People buy what you're doing. It is the story that everyone relates to.
Yeah, I'll give you one more case study example. So I've talked about it a little bit on this podcast that, separate from all the podcasting things that I'm doing, I also have a production company. So I helped build another Canadian's YouTube channel, Kevin O'Leary, from Shark Tank.
Yep. And
I met Kevin in 2019, and he said, if you were me, what would you do? And I said, quick scan of your socials. Your YouTube channel is collecting cobwebs, and you've got 6,000 subscribers, and the latest video you did was 8 years ago, and it's not very good. We could quickly develop a little series for you with very little effort and minimal budget, and we could turn this thing into a machine. And he said, great. How much is it going to cost? And I said, not much. Not much more than you and I just talked about. But the punchline is, we could use this channel to really promote your other investment companies that you invested in Shark Tank. You can give them love via this channel. You can use it as an incubator, or as a casting out a net to find new investment companies, which I think you're sort of doing that strategy with your short form content review on smaller companies or brands, which I think is really smart. I've seen other investors do this, like the Jason Calacanis of the world, and the All In podcast. Those guys are doing the same kind of thing as serial investors. And that's what happened. We grew the channel from 6,000 subs to about where it's at now, almost 1 million. And it's profitable. So there's sponsorship, there's YouTube AdSense. It's probably doing high six figures on all of that. Plus, it's a magnet to help him do more keynote speeches. And, you know, it's pretty common knowledge that Kevin will get between $150K and $250K to go speak in Dubai or in New York, or, you know, give a keynote. And those are pretty profitable too. So building your content, having a content strategy and building your brand, it pays lots of dividends. Just depends what your strategy is. Sometimes about relationships, sometimes it's direct revenue, sometimes it's business opportunities. I think you can't not do it. You got to do it.
Yep. Big believer in that. Yep. Yeah. And again, I think the world will see more from me. You know, seasons, I'm a big believer in seasons of life. The season I'm in right now is making sure that I have plenty of my time resources to direct to myself and my family. And at the same time, business is happening. There's more business opportunity that right now for me coming at me than I can take advantage of, which is my former 20-year-old or high school dropout self goes, why now? You know, why not then? Well, why? Because personal brand, right? Like even when I built a $100 million business and we sold it 5 years ago, I wasn't on social media personally, zero. You could be doing the best thing in the world, and if no one knows about you, you're not making an impact.
Yeah. So why weren't you there? Were you just like thinking?
I had social accounts to peeper accounts on the business so I can understand, you know, what were we doing as a brand on Instagram and how we were trying to convert. But when I wasn't working, I wanted to be at home with the family under the covers, you know, and not put myself out there. It was really the pandemic was the game changer for me, that when our big trade show got canceled, and I love trade shows, is when I see all my friends in the industry learn new things. And when Natural Products Expo was canceled, I thought, okay, now I'm stuck at home. What am I going to do? Well, I have this LinkedIn account. Let me dust it off and go and see what my friends are up to. And I put a couple posts out, and I realized that, wow, I love the connectivity, and I love it's therapy for me to share some of the things that I've learned, not only in business, but, you know, as a person and you know, my own personal growth. And then from there, it became like exercise. Being a creator stretches my brain. You know, I know I have something to share. I want to share something that's relevant to people, and I have to think about what that is. So I usually combine it now with exercise. But yeah, if I would have known the benefits before and could turn back the clock, I would have jumped on earlier. Because again, like the inbound flow of opportunity is what it's all about.
Yeah, it's hard too. I think that content strategy game, it's just like fitness, right? You just need reps to kind of get it right, because you know, you can get going down the wrong path of like virtue signaling, and no one likes that, you know. Or you could be like rewarding yourself. Oh, I'm so honored to have just won this major award, and you're holding the trophy, and everyone just kind of rolls over.
Well, and one of those out of 100, right? When you have a community, people will cheer for you. But I've learned it's as hard as we talked about it earlier. You know, the David and Goliath, or the underdog effect. You know, I'm successful now. I've had 3 9-figure exits in my career. There's a lot of people that don't want me to win, Brian. Like they think, oh yeah, who's this guy, successful, and what do I have to relate to him? Well, you know, I did the journey. It's 25 years later now, you know. So what I share, I'm very conscious of. You know, that's how you'll see me show up. I'm a man of the community, because that's who I am and that's who I want to be. I don't want to be on a pedestal and like, look at all the things that I've done. Right. I have to share some of the things that I've done because they're my path, right? They're authentic to me, but it's not just about that. If every one of my posts was the award shot, I don't think I'd have the following in the community that I do.
Yeah. And that's branding. That's branding 101 right there. So how has money or not having money, because usually like having it or the lack of it reveals your true character. You went from being poor, you know, growing up with a single mom, to now you've got it. How has money changed you or not changed you?
The biggest change is less stress in my life. You know, I'm a very simple person because I grew up with no money. I'm not intrigued to go fly on private jets and go on yachts, and people that are, or buy nice watches or whatever. People that are, it's all good. That's not who I am. So, yeah. But having money and having my house paid off, and having money to buy quality food that I want to buy, and simple things in life take the stress level down a lot. So lack of stress, and then a whole bunch more time. Like, I control my time, which is a little bit of a double-edged sword. I tell people, like, being an entrepreneur for 20 years, focused on one business that was my baby, that I knew every day I had to show up there, lead a team of 200 people. Like, that was my full focus. Everything else I could say no to. After success and selling the business, and then having both time, like money and time resources, it got a little more challenging, because I had to ask myself, what do I really want to be doing? How do I want to spend my time each day? And so I don't think entrepreneurs don't really like think about that. That transition, those transitionary times can be challenging. There's a grieving part of the process, and then there's a rebirth part of the process that you have to go through.
Yeah, a lot of these really successful entrepreneurs that I talk to, they have this FOMO, this fear of missing out. It's like they just had this tremendous exit, probably the biggest win of their lives. And then they're thinking, oh shit, like, I've got to do something else that's awesome, or else this is going to be the single thing that defines me. But that's kind of okay. Like, financial freedom, or just like I think, you're wealthy when you're in control of your time, regardless of what's in your bank account.
Yeah. It's hard to do that. I have to say, like, I could see where entrepreneurs, like, I was very fortunate that we sold Manitoba Harvest twice, right? We sold the majority on the first take, and then we sold the full company in 2019. But even after that, I thought, am I a one-hit wonder? Like, can I create success again? And then, when I invested in and became chairman of the board and helped Dror Belshine grow Soul Cuisine, and then that was my first portfolio company, and then we exited in $125 million exit deal. Then I had confidence personally as an entrepreneur. I said, "Oh, I've done it 3 times now. Okay, now I could see the pattern. I could see what we're trying to do, and I'm confident that I could be part of that. But I could see why entrepreneurs struggle with that, and also athletes struggle with that. An athlete can win the championship and then retire, right, and then be lost. And you see so many that like blow all their money or get into very bad situations for themselves, because that transition out of a single focus is not easy.
Yeah, you had a hat trick. That's cool. And I see Tom Brady making his next moves now too, so we'll see where that lands. My last question is, where's the white space? So like, health and wellness is having a moment here. It has been having a moment maybe the last decade. Particularly, wellness, CPG, there's products, there's services too, but it's like, where's the white space? Where are we headed? Is it more health and wellness? Is it, where do you see it? Where do you see how?
Yeah, I think on the two sides, like on the larger scale, I think that personalized health and wellness is in a state where it's just ready to boom, and whether that's health tracking, health measurement services, health guidance, coaching, all of that, because health is really individual. And so as the commercialization of it comes to an individualized approach, it's going to be really successful. On the food and beverage side of it, we're at a stage now of everything done better. All of these classic food and beverages, done better. And what does done better mean? Like cleaner ingredients, cleaner label, but still as nostalgic, flavor forward, just a replacement, and people will pay a little bit more for that. And that's started over the last like 5 or 10 years, but that's where the industry is really going to continue to grow. And the great thing for entrepreneurs is that the big food and beverage CPG companies aren't going to innovate there. They can't, they're not going to, they're going to marginally make their products better, but the consumer is going light speed, like that they want a healthy Pop-Tart, and who's making that for them, and I say that as one food example, but it's every single food and beverage is going to be replayed like that, or the opportunity is there. So,
I think you're spot on. I just walked down the aisle at my grocery store is still just full of like blue stuff and red stuff and purple stuff. And I'm just thinking, man, these like blue chip companies have just owned and dominated shelf space for decades, and it's going to be hard to wrestle out of their death grip. But it's like most of the food I walk down the aisles and look at is just so pathetically unhealthy and bad. We've got to have innovators, smaller companies coming in there creating good stuff, and then we've got to have consumers step up and buy it. Otherwise, it's just going to be this vicious circle of unhealthy food for us, our kids, generations to come. It's a big, big problem. I'm happy to see you and the people that you're investing in at least trying to fight that battle. I think it's worth fighting.
Yeah, and it's growing, right? But like 25 years ago when I got into business, 5% of the food and beverage was natural and organic, and now it's about 10%. So 10% of our food supply is healthier, and 90% of it is still, mainstream, commercially processed, a lot of bad ingredients in it. And that kind of meets up with how society's doing, right? I saw the stat of like 85% of people in the U.S., and I'm sure Canada is very similar, are metabolically unhealthy. If they go get a medical, they're off. Their blood work's off, or they're metabolically unhealthy. Well, yeah, kind of matches up with the food, right? And so the opportunity is there. I hope we get to the tipping point of that kind of 15 to 20% of healthy food in my lifetime. It's doubled in the last 25 years. Maybe in another 25 years, it's going to double again. That'd be great to see, because it sucks when we could see a larger part of society going down a path of illness and disease and more illness and disease. I don't want that for my kids or my grandkids, and just being part of that change, that positive, healthy change.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that, tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man, always said it, it's not about the destination, no. It's all about the journey. Ain't nothing changed but the weather. The dangling carrot that hang from the rear view. Your dreams in the past ain't nowhere near you. Backseat drivers got nothing but 2 cents. Shotgun riders too biased, they all liars. I should get an A for effort, I'm too tired. But I'm never giving up, that's why I'm kinda admired. Role model, like it or not, I gotta play it. Sugarcoat the rhyme sometimes, but still say it. Said I was quitting at 40 is just a fear.